You want to talk about lizard people? You know, reptilian humanoids who've been here before us, live among us, and control everything that happens in our world. One of the most infamous theories to exist. The debunkers tried really hard to stop me from talking about this one. Oh yeah, we're doing lizard people. Because it's not just a recent thing. The idea of reptilian beings has been around for thousands of years. And lately, we've had countless instances where we allegedly catch them slipping in 4K on TV. Well, more like 144p, always questionably blurry, still unsettling to think about, but are any of these real? Whether a flicker of lizard-like eyes, scaly skin, or just some weird reptilian shape-shifting going on, their jig is finally up, and it's time to expose them. Reptilians, Silurians, Draconians, Archons, or just plain lizard people. This age-old theory definitely didn't appear overnight. As many myths do, this one traces back to some of the oldest stories ever told around the world. Yup, it's the classic, look at all these past civilizations that talked about this, so it must be true argument that the close-minded love to dismiss. But try to tell me there isn't more than one common theme here. From the human-cobra hybrid Nagas in Hindu mythology, to Quetzalcoatl, the serpent god of the Aztecs in Central America. Ancient African shamans had tales of the Ninki Nanka, a race of reptilians. Apep was one of the Egyptian gods of chaos, taking the form of a great snake. The Hopi and Zuni natives of North America called them the Ant People, who helped them take refuge in underground cities after a worldwide cataclysm. Chinese and other East Asian cultures spoke of the Kappa, aquatic reptilian humanoids. Ancient Mesopotamia had the Ubaid lizard men, carved figurines that predate even the Sumerians. Even the Bible commonly depicted the snake as a creature that communicated with humans. Just like the flood myths of our past, when something is mentioned this often throughout history, it doesn't necessarily confirm, but it does increase the probability that it might have actually happened. The argument against it is that they're just myths, made-up stories that glamorize our origins that have been shared throughout the generations, which they could very well be. But the real smoking bullet to this claim is this. How did civilizations on this side of the world have virtually the same stories as ones on this side, when common history tells us they had no communication with each other until much later on? Neither of them knew the others existed, yet they all had the same stories to tell, begging the question, did these stories actually happen? Reptilian-like humanoid beings that lived among us. Is it really just a coincidence? Because modern theories suggest these lizards may have been a race of a highly advanced species that existed on Earth far, far before our time. This, my friends, is the Silurian hypothesis, and it might actually have scientific evidence for it. Astrophysicists Adam Frank and Gavin Schmidt proposed the Silurian hypothesis, exploring the possibility of detecting an advanced civilization that existed way before us by looking at rocks. So, normally if we ever want to find evidence of ancient cultures that existed before us, we do archaeology and find direct evidence like artifacts, pottery, buildings, roads, even seeds, which we find all the time and we can use to determine that people like the ancient Egyptians or Sumerians did in fact exist. But this only works on civilizations a couple thousand, maybe up to 10,000 years old if we're lucky. When we start talking millions, even hundreds of millions of years ago, this method doesn't work anymore. Direct evidence of civilization has an expiry date. Everything we create decays into unrecognizable dust well within the span of a million years or likely much less. For example, the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, with the first signs of life appearing about 3.5 billion years ago, and the first land animals coming to the scene around 4 to 500 million years ago, but some sources claim that it could have been even earlier. Now think about this. We went from stone tablets to iPads in about 5,000 years. Even 400 million years provides plenty of time for potentially hundreds of civilizations to appear, evolve, fall, and decay into nothingness within that slim 5,000 year window. So instead, we need to turn to our geological record to find signs of older civilizations. Everything we know today will eventually just be a thin layer of sedimentary rock deep beneath the surface, and we can look into our past by looking at these layers, looking for things evident of civilization in these rock layers, like plastics, rare earth metals, fertilizers, or even nuclear isotopes and such. But our number one indicator would be carbon, a very specific type of carbon that only industrialized civilizations can produce in huge amounts worldwide, typically indicated by sudden, quick, and unexplained changes in global temperature, which is exactly what they found. The Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, PETM, about 56 million years ago. ago, where global temperatures rose by about 6 to 9 degrees Celsius in a short amount of time, among other indicators pointing to that of a highly advanced civilization that may have existed during that time. It's far from confirmed, and the creators of this hypothesis themselves admit it's more of a thought experiment than it is of actual proof. But they do bring up a very interesting point. If a civilization like ours were to collapse in the next couple of thousand years, which honestly I don't know how much longer we're gonna last, our short-lived timeline on Earth as an industrial civilization compared to the monumental geographic timelines would be next to impossible to detect in the geologic record. Meaning that if a civilization 50 million years in the future were to look at Earth's rock layers in search of their past, for all they'd be able to tell, we never existed. And the same applies to us in search of civilizations 50 million years in the past. Wait a minute, what about fossil records? Dinosaurs are over 65 million years old and we have evidence of them, don't we? If there's no fossil evidence of civilization from that long ago, then they must have never existed. You really thought you could get me, huh? Dinosaurs lived on Earth for about 165 million years before they were wiped out. That gives us a huge timeline of remains to get fossilized. And even then, we've only found a couple thousand dinosaur fossils around the world when they roamed the Earth for almost 200 million years. Case in point, fossilization is rare, like mega super rare. And if we shrink that 165 million year dinosaur timeline to just a couple thousand years, as we can expect from a human civilization, those fossils are basically non-existent. But even in the rare instance that we do happen to find fossilized artifacts that are hundreds of millions of years old, as we allegedly have in out-of-place artifacts like the London Hammer or the Kaluga screw, they are always dismissed as hoaxes or mistakes, and nobody wants to talk about them out of fear of being mocked and ridiculed, just like anyone who talks about lizard people. Hopefully the reptilians don't get me before the debunkers do, so if I don't release part 2 by next week, they probably did.